Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITY TV interview. I'm joined today by Luke Mulcahy. He is the Solutions Architect at FLEXdata Solutions. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for taking the time. Now, Luke, let's start at the beginning. Can you please tell us when FLEXdata was founded and how its products and services have evolved to help organizations assess, plan, build, integrate, optimize, and support their mission-critical enterprise environments in 2022?
Well, FlexData started in 2013 and started by a group of people, including myself, who had worked with larger systems integrators. And we saw an opportunity for smaller integrators to focus on some technologies that we felt were best in class, but underrepresented in the market, and also offer mid to enterprise clients a more flexible and adaptive working model. So rather than be prescriptive about the way we would deliver services into their environment, we wanted to be flexible and deliver services that best suited our clients' environments.
Hence FlexData.
Hence FlexData. So that was in 2013, and rolling forward, we have worked very closely with NetApp from day one, some other key technologies, but NetApp has been a key driver of the technology suites that we represent, and largely around the optimization, the data management, service availability. All roads leads to data and the availability or the ability of applications effectively to access that data to service clients. And then enhance data services so that businesses can be starting to make decisions based on analyzing that data. So the NetApp technology suite has always been key to our service capabilities. And that continues today as more organizations look to leverage cloud and hybrid environments. Fundamentally, the data management, the optimization of resources, optimization of processes is just as relevant now as it was in 2013 when we kicked off.
Yeah, probably more so because we have so much more data, so much more capability. But is NetApp the only company that you specialize in and platform, with your clients, or are there other companies and platforms that you work with?
No, we do a lot of work with Cisco and their UCS compute platform. We do a lot of work with Veeam and Rubrik around their data protection and anti-ransomware and data availability services. So there's a bunch of different technologies. Obviously, VMware is always the glue that holds a lot of these components together for on-prem environments. And then there's a host of cloud and software as a service, overlay products that can provide different features, functionalities depending on what's required.
Now, earlier in July, FlexData was announced as the first Queensland headquartered partner for NetApp's Keystone offering. So can you please tell us more about NetApp's Keystone service and why this announcement is important, as well as what it means for your customers?
Well, Keystone is a model, predominantly a commercial model from NetApp to allow clients to consume their technologies in a more cloud-like manner. And so commercially, that essentially represents $1 per gig per tier of storage service. Fundamentally, that still involves largely hardware that will sit on premise or be utilized in a co-location facility, but it is consumed in a cloud-like manner. And operationally, the concept is it's operated in a cloud-like manner as well. So while clients can choose, if they have the capable skills, to look after it themselves, the idea is that it's storage as a service. And so it's the platform and the technology and the services combined into a consumption model. And so from a NetApp point of view, it's a great offering to provide to their client base who want to be consuming IT services and assets in that manner. And from a Flex point of view, it's just a natural extension of the managed services and project services that we've been offering since inception.
So can you please tell us about some of the customers that you're working with and how you're working with them?
So there's some commercial in confidence stuff, of course. So I can talk about some large university clients that we work with. There's some large data management clients that provide key functionality to banks when they wish to, consider whether they're going to offer a home loan, for example. I can talk about G. James Glass and Aluminium, who are a very large manufacturer up here in Queensland. At one point in time, and I'm not sure the current stats, but they were providing 70% of the glass that went into high-rise buildings in Australia. Anyone that sat on a train in Queensland, look in the corner of the window, and they'll see a little G. James symbol in the train window. So we work very closely with them. Outside of Brisbane, Solomon Islands government is also one of our key clients. So we've done a lot of work with those guys in the last 9 to 10 years, consolidating their services, allowing them to offer IT services that they've never had the capability to provide before. So we help them support all 24 ministries, ancillary services like hospital and medical. So all the medical imaging runs on systems we're helping them with. They've got the South Pacific Games coming up next year, so we're working with them on supporting systems for that as well.
So when a new customer approaches FLEXdata for help, what is the typical onboarding process? I know it's different for everyone, but what's the typical process?
Well, we consider ourselves, I guess, what the industry probably terms a traditional integrator in these days. So we still take a solution-led approach. We ultimately look at what the customer is trying to achieve and what the business is trying to do and what their challenges might be, and then look to see, okay, there are appropriate processes or technologies that are going to actually help them achieve an outcome. And then depending on what that might be, that might then be some services from us. That might be selling them some equipment and helping them design and implement it, possibly handing the keys over at the end of that project for them to run and operate. Or in some cases, we become operationally responsible, either partly or jointly for that infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we've got some clients where we operate in a what we call a partial responsibility model. So we share responsibility. And we've got some clients where we are their storage and backup and data management team, where, at the client's request, their guys can't make changes in that level of environment. They focus on, supplying business services and more application fronting services while we look after the core infrastructure in the background.
Yeah. So again, it's different for every customer and depending on their needs and hardware and service levels. But how quickly can customers generally see results once FLEXdata has implemented the relevant solution or solutions?
So in a Keystone context, up to within about 3 months. So Keystone in particular is very good for clients that, because it's based on that consumption model, there's a lot of use cases for clients that are looking to migrate off to the cloud. Mm-hmm. But, that journey is taking some time. It's not it's great to be able to draw, a box for your on-prem and a cloud for the cloud and an arrow and go, right, that's where we're going. That's awesome. It takes a lot of time sometimes. Yeah. And businesses often, when they've made that decision, we want to move to the cloud, don't want to hear about, we need to buy more infrastructure for our on-prem data center. So Keystone helps to fit that commercial model, but also de-risk the environment while that transition is taking place. Because we've found a lot of people that transition takes a lot longer than might be originally planned or hoped, and they potentially end up in a fair bit of in a pretty nasty risk position as their core critical systems, which are typically the last applications to be migrated, are running on hardware and infrastructure that's increasingly old and aged and unable to support new features, functionalities, exposed to new security vulnerabilities. So it works very well there. And it also works very well in scenarios where organizations don't necessarily have a good handle on their data growth over time. So it works very well for companies that might be in a big acquisition phase. They might have plans to triple in size over the next 2 years, but that doesn't mean they want to buy 3 times as much infrastructure as they require today. So just like a cloud hyperscaler or a private cloud provider will allow a consumption-based model, so too does Keystone. But it is still systems and infrastructure that needs to be designed, deployed. Systems need to migrate to it. So there's always going to be an upfront activity that needs to happen before that system can come into production.
And I assume that systems are running in parallel so that the old system still goes and the new system is put in place, and then there comes a point where it just switches across when everyone's happy.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, a typical migration kind of process from any technology to any new one, whether it's an application or underlying infrastructure. And, that's kind of bread and butter activity for us to manage that level of migration. But it does need to happen. And so it doesn't mean, okay, I sign the contract, today and tomorrow I'm across. There's always a transition that needs to happen.
Yeah, we all want it to happen tomorrow, but good things take time.
They do. They do. And sometimes they take longer, and that's exactly where this model works very well to help organizations bridge that gap between potentially where they are today and where they want to be. This is a technical and commercial model that can help bridge between those two places.
Now, before I get on to some of the last questions, is there anything else about FLEXdata or the work you do with NetApp or Cisco or Veeam or others that you do that you want to highlight to us as we speak?
I think, we've been around for a long time and we're still here. We're quite small, but we're bespoke. But we work with some big organizations. We've got a lot of experience. And I think the key thing one key reason we've been successful is because we have been flexible in our approach to our clients. We truly do look and go, right, what works best for our clients? Operating wise, what model? If we're doing a managed service, we have a base template we start from, but we don't have a fixed way of operating. Every single service that we offer is bespoke and tailored to best suit what our clients actually want. So we will always work with the end user and the end organization to fit in with what their goals are and what works best for their organization. And that was a key philosophy of how we started. And that still remains a key philosophy of who we are today. And we still see that as a key differentiator against how some larger organizations operate. A lot of larger organizations will operate and say, right, this is the way we do it. And you need, Mr. Client, or Mrs. Client, or gender neutral client, you need to fit into our
box,
our way of operating. Yeah. We offer these services and we offer it in this way. And that's the way you need to consume it. We operate in a different way.
You could have easily called yourselves Agile Data.
We could have as well. There's numerous buzzwords floating around that perhaps we could rebrand as the buzzword change in the industry as well. But
I like flex. It's good. Flexible. Yeah. Flexibility, agility. I mean, that's the benefit of being a smaller operation. You can more easily turn on a dime and suit or deliver products that suit the needs of the customer. I mean, that's the whole box and dice, isn't it?
Yeah. And so while we maintain that flexibility and agility in that operating way, the other core tenet of our approach is that we always want to be as good as we can be at the things we do decide to do. And we've been very clear in our journey about what we don't do, and very clear with our clients. And we'll say, this is what we do and we do it well. And this is what we don't do, because we don't want to go and try and do something and not do it well.
Yeah.
And again, as a smaller player, that's really helped us be successful by being really clear and concise. And when we say we're going to do it, we do it well.
So how do you see FLEXdata evolving over the next couple of years?
Well, I think obviously as a traditional integrator focused on infrastructure, the adoption of cloud could be seen to be the end of us. But the reality is that the underlying challenges and requirements of organizations is still there. So they have applications and services that run their business. And those applications need to be available. They need to be made in times of outage. They need to be recoverable. And they need to be run on systems, whether it's a cloud system or an on-prem system or a hybrid mix of both, that is operating effectively, both from a resource optimization and a performance optimization point of view, but also a cost optimization point of view. And so a lot of the key things that we offer around on-prem infrastructure and traditional hardware is just as applicable when those services are running, in cloud-based environments, whether that's on a private cloud or in a hyperscaler. There's always still going to be opportunity to improve availability, improve recoverability, and optimize for the cost optimization as well. And so they're a lot of the key things that we're offering and we do, and we see that will continue regardless of where the workloads are actually running. The other aspect for us is that we do a lot of work with the hosting and cloud providers as well. So in some ways our client base is changing away potentially from the end user and more towards the actual service providers themselves. And then if we look at our core technology partners, and particularly NetApp, they have a wealth of and an ever-evolving portfolio of cloud-based services that are providing more insight and more availability, I guess, for clients to look inside their own data sets. And so those services and applications are equally applicable to value that Flex can offer to the market.
So as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask if you could please share a memory of your first computer.
It had a telecom symbol on it, which became Telstra at some point along the way. So it was some machine. I don't know where it came from. My dad got it from somewhere.
Did it plug into the TV and have teletext on it?
No, it had its own monitor,
Okay.
which was bigger than deeper than our TV. And it had these little square kind of cartridges that used to slot in, and you'd boot from a cartridge, and I remember it was running DOS something. And then you'd put another cartridge in, and then it would load up a program. And it was pretty basic stuff. So that was around the time that my friends were starting to play with Commodore 64s and things like that. But I never had one of those. I had this strange telecom DOSy machine.
We've come a long way from the technology of then to what we have today. I mean, cloud would have just been an inkling in people's, the splinter of the mind's eye, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally, what was it? There was that old, back in the Sun Microsystem days, I think they had a bit of a catchphrase. It was like the network.
Oh, the network is the computer.
And I think fundamentally that's still the case.
Yeah.
Is that, these things, the computers can do what they can do, but when you can hook multiple computers together, that's when the sum, the total is more than the sum of its parts, that sort of stuff. So,
absolutely.
If you look at the work that we've done in the Solomon Islands, we've been able to consolidate all of their ministries into centralized systems and provide levels of availability and performance and capability that they've never had before. Like 10 years ago, it was just unheard of. Every ministry was patching its own stuff together. But that was not possible until a project that was done prior to us being involved there, which was to build a MAN network connecting about 90 government buildings around Honiara. That network allowed the consolidation of services and to happen. And so my little telecom box with its little, modem, which I couldn't use at certain times because obviously people needed to make phone calls. That couldn't do too much by itself. But once you hook all these things together, then
that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So my second last question is to ask, what is some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
Oh, I don't know. I think I I think measure twice, cut once.
That was my father's uncle's favourite saying.
Yeah, and I think that in some ways, my dad used to say that one a lot, because when we had to build another bed or we had to build something else. I grew up in a household where we recycled timber and built stuff ourselves, and so he used to say that a lot. But I think it applies beyond just cutting off spare bits of lumber, because it really comes down to planning. And I think I've spent a lot of time in IT in particular, doing these big migrations for big clients, big organizations that have very critical services running on them. And that, measure twice is all about the planning. And the cut once is the doing. So when we're planning migrations or cutovers or implementations of new systems, that planning, as tedious as it can be, and the reviewing of the documentation and the process is still very, very important. Because when you do that cutover, it's got to work.
As a solutions architect, setting those, good foundations is part of your everyday job.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we all focus on the outcome and the shiny, awesome endpoint, but it's equally important to understand that, that any journey consists of lots of individual steps, and the planning and rigor and diligence around making sure those steps are thought of is going to ultimately lead to everyone getting to that outcome in the right way, in not disrupting their end users, in not disrupting their business, on time, on budget. So I think that measure twice, cut once applies across all of that.
It applies to life.
It does. Yeah.
So what is your final message to ITWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I think just you got to roll with the changes. It's if you choose to be in the IT world, you've just got to accept that change is a constant. And I think from an end user organization point of view, it's always hard. In some ways, I think it would be terrible to be a CIO at the moment, because by the time you've made a decision on anything, it's obsolete because it's moving so quickly. Mm. But I guess that's the world we live in, and that's the challenges that we've got to face. And from a Flex point of view, we're here to work and help with organisations to achieve their outcomes. Tried and proven and measured manner.
I think the only job more difficult than the CIO is the CSO or CISO, who's got to deal with all the security implications of what the CIO has put into place.
You can't. That's a whole other world of hurt in there. Yeah. Some people thrive on it, though. I've worked with some very, very capable people in that space, and they love it. They love the challenge. For me, I don't know if I'd be able to sleep at night if I truly understood as much as some of these people.
Yeah,
about these systems. But again, that's just the part of the world we live in. We hook these things up and we connect everything, and there's great things that can happen, but great things can be exploited for
nefarious purposes,
evilness instead of niceness.
Well, I always like to think technology is our friend and not our terminator like enemy. And anything can be used for good or bad, but there's more of us trying to do good and help businesses and help than there are those trying to do the wrong thing. So keep it up.
Yeah, it's a constant challenge.
Yeah.
Keeps us all busy. It's great.
Well, Luke Mulcahy, the Solutions Architect at FLEXdata Solutions, thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Pleasure, Alex. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Take care.